I know that Elaine had put something in the chat, and we asked that wherever possible, if you're able to turn off the video and make sure you're muted. It just makes it for a lot clearer presentation at our end. So if you could do that, we would really appreciate it. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. We want to welcome you. We're hoping that the questions that have been submitted are answered tonight, and we're hoping that you're going to hear some of your questions in here. Basically, what we did is we reached out to our communities, our 3 communities, and asked for questions to come in district-wide. And so what we're doing tonight is we're not responding to questions just, for example, from Stow. We're looking at answering questions from across the entire district. We would want you to know that these are district-wide questions, not just specific to your community. We also want to give a shout out to our school committee members. Leah, Rich, Steve, Elaine is manning our chat line again tonight for both this session and the next one, and she did both on Tuesday night. And Ross Mulcairn is with us tonight. Our principal at Center School, and Christy Nealon, is also here, and our assistant principal. And I know that Kyle Grady is not available to be with us tonight, and I'm not sure if Patrick will be able to jump in later on or not. Also want to thank Karen. I see Karen just popped on, Karen. So hi, welcome. Thank you so much. Karen sits on our steering committee and is involved with school councils, and is just a jack of all trades, and we just want to thank her for all of her efforts too. So the steering committee kind of helps to guide our work. We have 3 layers of working committees as such right now. We have the district-wide steering committee that Karen sits on, and actually so does Elaine sit on that committee. And we've got a number of parents that sit on that committee that represent the different grade groupings, the elementary, middle, and high school level. And we have union folks on that. We've got different administrators on that. So that total steering committee it works with Dr. McGuire and myself. We want to also say that Dr. McGuire is with us tonight, and he and I are going to be kind of co-teaming here as we go through the questions tonight. Underneath that steering committee, there are a couple of working groups that are basically kind of in the middle that work with Dr. McGuire. For example, the teaching and learning, you're going to hear him refer to teaching and learning department quite a bit tonight, because they, of course, are involved in the nitty gritty with the curriculum and instruction components. So he'll be taking all of those types of questions. And then you also have like a group that's working on the whole busing piece, the facilities piece. There's a working group that I know that Christy Nealon is leading that's helping with the social emotional component of our work as we move back in to the new school year. And then we also have a social justice group working. And below that particular level of groupings are the individual school task forces. And each one of those task forces is hard at work as well right now, just trying to figure out different logistics, whether it's the student's arrival, the dismissal, what that looks like. They work closely with Lisa Golbicki, and Lisa, if you can give a wave too. Lisa is our nurse leader, and she oversees our nursing unit and the different nurses across the school district. And she is just hugely resourceful for us, and you're going to hear her talk tonight as she responds to some of the questions as well. So we've got all of these different groups that are all working. The individual task forces too also have different members from the community on it. Parents, for example, they have teachers on it as well as administrators. So we've got a really wide array of stakeholders on these different working committees. So we just want to thank everyone. If you're involved in it, we thank you so much for your efforts. So tonight we're going to do kind of a read through of the questions. Dr. McGuire will be asking the questions, and then a group of us will be answering. Very often he will be answering, responding to the questions. One of the things that we are focused on tonight is special education, and that's because Joan DeAngelis did a presentation last night, and we submitted all of our questions to her, and so she worked diligently last night through the school committee presentation to make sure that if she had the responses, she was able to. The special education we almost see as running a parallel program right now to whatever model it is that we end up with. We had to submit tomorrow. Dr. McGuire has got it all set to submit to, and we thank you again, Dr. McGuire, our submission to the DESE, where we have to basically outline what a full return would look like, a hybrid and a full remote. So those are that particular document is all set to submit. But the SPED is almost a separate entity, and it will actually kind of dovetail and interconnect in with. Right now, we're looking at the hybrid model as our startup model. And the reason I say right now is because we don't really know. That's where we're aiming. That's what we're aiming for. But quite frankly, things could turn on a dime. If the trajectory, for example, of COVID-19 does any type of different trajectory, we could be in a very different place. This is only July 30th tonight, and a lot's can happen between now and September 16th. So, and the other thing we would say is we're going to give you answers to the best of our knowledge tonight, but please know that those answers could change as well, because we continue to get guidance from the DESE. It tends to come like in a bit of a drip fashion. We will get some guidance very often on Friday nights at anywhere from 9 o'clock to midnight is when we'll get some guidance, or once on Wednesday night close to midnight. And so you can say something maybe at a school committee meeting, and by that point in time, once you're done that school committee meeting, we could have new guidance in front of us that changes some of the answers that we've been given. SPED is also one of those things where there's guidance that continues to come out, and can offer a lot of changes, and there's not a lot of wiggle room with the SPED as it's being laid out right now from the Commissioner's office and Russell Johnson's office. So there's not a whole lot of wiggle room for the district, for example, to go one way or another with SPED. It pretty much has to deal with exactly what's been laid out for us. So we've chosen right now to aim towards the hybrid model. As I say, it could change. Another way it could change is if the governor, for example, decides to come out and tell us, I don't know, September 10th, pick a date, September 1st, that everyone across the state is going to remote, then we are expected to pivot on a dime. And we have been told that over and over and over again by the state. Be prepared in case you have to pivot. So we're well aware of that. So tonight we come to you to give you answers that we know effective right now is a response. There are some things I will tell you too, quite frankly, that we won't have answers to, and we may not get answers to. And if that's going to be the case, we'll tell you that too. So the chat feature that we've got here, as I say, Elaine and Rossmont Karen are going to be operating that. If they can questions right away, they will respond to them. If it's a question that they think should be directed to somebody else, they may direct you and say, you might want to send that into either Dr. McGuire or myself or somebody else. And so, and if there's time at the end, and we find generally there's about just a couple minutes at the end that we're able to take additional questions, then we're going to try to answer those as well. So that kind of gives you a bit of a layout. We found that these time periods on Tuesday night for both Bolton and Lancaster went very quickly. I mean, in terms of trying to get through 100 plus questions in an hour and a half is a bit daunting, but I think we did a good job of it. I would also say tonight, Rob Frieswick is not available to be with us this evening. And so I'm going to do a bit of a quasi response to his questions. But I would suggest that if you don't hear the answers in enough detail, that you go back to take a look at the tape from Tuesday night, and you can hear his responses to those questions in greater detail. So we're going to start this way. We'll start with the questions that Rob normally would respond to. I think there's only about 5 of those. And then we'll turn it over for Lisa Gilbicki for anything that's medical. And then the rest are pretty much basic questions that Dr. McGuire and I will be answering. So with that, I'm hoping that I remembered everything, Dr. McGuire. Did I forget anything? No. Okay, great.
You're good.
Okay. Okay, so why don't we start with the questions?
Okay, we'll start with the first question as it relates to facilities. The first question is, in the conversation regarding air exchange in the schools, there was discussion regarding the state's recommendation that buildings be equipped with filters with a MERV rating of 13. What exactly is that level, and is the plan at Florence Sawyer to change the filters monthly in order to reach the highest level possible?
So although this question was really directed at Florence Sawyer,
Right.
we would want folks to know that we're looking at this in all of our buildings, which
Any
is
school.
why. Yes, exactly. So you're right. And the MERV rating, now, again, I don't know what I'm talking about. So sound bites that you're getting. And again, we'd ask that you listen to Rob's response. In essence, most of the schools across the state are set at MERV ratings between 8 and 10. I believe that MERV ratings go between 8 and 16. We have to be cautious that we don't overcompensate, or there's a potential to freeze our pipes. So we have to be really, really cautious with this. I don't know that we can get to a 13. I think that we're aiming to get higher than 8 and 10, but I don't know if it's feasible for us to get to a 13.
The next question has to do with the HVAC systems. What options are available and being considered for bringing fresh outside air into facilities, be it passively through open windows or actively with the HVAC system intake?
And again, I'd encourage you to listen to Rob's response to this, but I think that what we're looking at through a couple of things. First of all, we're looking at running our systems longer during the day when we would normally shut them off, for example, at nighttime. And we're looking at just the opposite right now. We're looking to keep those systems run right through the entire evening so that it continues to bring fresh air into our buildings regularly. We'll also look to keep our windows open as much as we possibly can during especially during the fall weather, so that there's a constant source of fresh air that's being brought in. Rob would also tell you that our HVAC systems bring in regular outside air into our classrooms regularly.
Next question has to do with water safety. With the prolonged shutdown for facilities from March through September 2020, how is the school addressing concerns regarding the CDC's occupancy guidance related to Legionnaire's disease?
So I think that it's really not just the Legionnaire's disease. I think it's beyond that. So I think that people might have thought that, with the building shut down, that all things came to a standstill in the buildings as of March 13th. And that simply didn't happen. Our custodians continued to go in. They continued to do checks. They continued to run water. And right at this point in time, they're in there pretty regularly and have been for a couple months now, and are very conscientious to make sure that the water is consistently running. So we wouldn't want you to think that everything came to a halt and that no water was turned on in the buildings. Nothing could be further from the truth. And so they're very cognizant of that, and the water continues to be running in all buildings.
Next question has to do with fans. Will fans be provided to cool any classrooms or spaces down without air conditioning? It is hard enough to focus when it's 90 degrees out, let alone now with a mask on.
Right. And the building that we're most concerned with regards to this is really in Bolton, because most of our other schools are air conditioned. And sometimes it's that top floor in Bolton that's just, it's just ridiculous how hot it gets up there. I think that, Lisa, you might be able to add something to this. I believe you and Rob have looked into fans, and I think we've decided that that's probably going to be a no. Would that be
That's
correct?
a no at this point. There's
Yeah.
the windows being open, a yes. Fans, no, it's not recommended right now.
Yeah, thank you. So that's where we stand with the fans at this point in time. Although I would tell you that we are thinking very much about the notion of a heat index, and the fact is that we may just have to close down a school or two, and or the district, depending on the heat index. So we're very cognizant of the fact that our teachers and our students are going to have those masks on all day. And the point is well taken that it's hard enough to focus when it's 90 degrees out, never mind if it's 90 degrees in your classroom and you've got a mask on. So we absolutely understand that.
Next question. Has it been discussed to put in any special lighting that kills germs?
So that was something that Rob had looked into to see if that was something that was a possibility for us, but quite frankly, it's cost prohibitive. And so it's not something that we could go very far down the road with. So at this point in time, it's not being considered.
Okay, we'll move on to questions for Lisa. In the school committee conversation and in her memo, Superintendent Clenchey mentioned that the school committee does not feel the 3-foot minimum recommended by the state is sufficient. What does that mean exactly for students and teachers in buildings?
So what we're referring to is physical distance greatly reduces the risk of transmission. In general, 6 feet is recommended distance between individuals where feasible. The minimum distance required is 3 feet, which is medically permitted when wearing a mask. But the district, in the Shoal Regional School District, feels 3 feet is not enough. And therefore, we are working on plans to maintain 6 feet apart to the best of our abilities when feasible, to keep the spread and those cohorts separated as much as possible.
Next question has to do with COVID testing, specifically rapid and frequent testing for faculty, particularly those who live in towns with higher COVID rates. How will this be addressed for the safety of both faculty and students?
So that's referred to as universal testing, that question refers to testing of all students and staff in school settings for COVID, regardless of whether they're showing symptoms or have known exposure to somebody with COVID-19. According to the latest reports that we just read from the CDC dated on July 24th, they do not recommend universal testing of all students and staff for several reasons. I'll just name a few. Viral testing only provides COVID-19 status for individuals at the time of testing. So we could test them today, but they'd be positive in the next 2 days. So that one-time testing doesn't work. One-time or universal entry testing could miss COVID-19 cases in the early stages of infection. So they may test negative today, but if we tested them tomorrow, they would have been positive. So that's the reason why we don't do universal testing at this point in schools.
What are the district's or state's guidelines for when schools should reopen in person or when they would close again if the data suggests rising risk?
And I think number 33 as well, Todd, we can do at the same
Right.
time.
And with that, according to COVID Act now, the COVID threat level in Massachusetts has just increased to at risk. If we reopen in a hybrid model, is there an increase in risk level which would cause the district to move to all remote?
Yeah, there's always that opportunity to have to go fluid and go back and forth, and that's based on all of the data. The decision, though, to close the schools for in-person learning would be made by local officials, and what I mean by that is we mean administrators within our building, public health officials, guidance from the DPH, the CDC, and also DESI guidelines. The governor can always shut it down at any point as well, but we follow suit within our communities and the data that is trended with us.
I understand that if we are to be in school in person, the level of disinfectant is required in this era of COVID-19. However, it does raise new potential concerns. What are the risks for creation of or transmission of resistant superbugs, such as MRSA?
So this one was a great question, and one that I reached out to our school-based physician consultant, which is Dr. Russell Coleman, to get a more of a pediatric and physician stance on this. And his response was the risk is low, that antibiotics are more of an issue because the bacteria can develop mutations that allow them to handle the antibiotic. He has seen some reports on bacteria, hospitals developing some tolerance of the alcohol base. This is why they use other products for cleanings within the classrooms. So at this point, these doctors feeling that it's at very low risk, those mutations to happen.
Last question for Lisa. For sick policies, are the teachers and children going to constantly get COVID tested and quarantined once the flu and cold season hit?
This is a challenging one to answer because the protocols are all over the map based on the symptoms that may happen. As a supplement to Desi's initial fall, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, no, can we please ask everybody make sure that they are muted? Thank you.
Okay, so initial fall reopening guidance protocols for responding to COVID-19 scenarios in schools on the bus in the community center were provided on July 17th. They're slightly different from the DPH guidelines, what's happening in schools as well. So there is potential for increased testing for students and staff, but it really is, there's so many different protocols. There's 9 of them currently right now. So it would take me too long to go through them all, but just know that we have the protocols and sometimes they would be tested and sometimes they wouldn't be. And I can provide those protocols as needed.
And Todd, can you go back to 48, please?
There's been a lot of talk about the state decision not to require face masks for kindergartners and first graders. Is this being discussed internally? If face masks were to be required for K-1, our family would likely choose to do all virtual schooling.
Yeah, so this was brought up at school committee last evening, and we are, the Neshoba Regional School District is recommending, as well as many others, and I would say most in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts school districts, are moving to K through 12 mask required for all. It is required on buses currently now, regardless of age, but we're going to follow that suit within the school systems.
Great. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll go to the beginning.
We will.
First
Number
question.
one.
When will parents get their child scheduled for this hybrid model? As a family with 2 working parents who can't work from home, this is of huge importance.
And we absolutely understand that. We're working through the details. There's a lot to work through. This is complex work right now because there are a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that we need to look at for teacher certification, tie that all in with impact bargaining, with just so many discussions and different stakeholders. We're aiming to have this around mid-August. If we can do it earlier, we will, but the individual schools are working on this right now. As soon as we can send it out, we will get it out because we know it's so important for everyone.
How will students be organized if we move to a hybrid model?
So in essence, we've got a couple of priorities with this. First, we want to try to keep our families together. So, and even within the families, we're really aiming to keep that elementary and middle school students all on the exact same days on versus days off type thing. So you'll see us focus on that, and wherever possible, you'll see us try to make sure that if there's a student at the high school that makes sense to add into that mix, then we would do that as well. So you'll see us put families first. I think one of the things that needs to come up, I think that there are some parents, and rightly so, that are concerned about their children going back, especially into a class that they feel that they don't have a friend in there. And so that's something that we've had a lot of discussion about the administrative team. And so we're clearly very acutely aware of that. And we don't want students to feel alone either when they go back. There's nothing that's going to feel normal about going back, whether it's hybrid, remote, or even if we were to go back full return. There's nothing that feels warm and welcoming when you're sitting at 6 foot distance, and even for lunches. And so, I think that the principals are keenly aware of this, and I think you'll see them try to work that component into their class configurations as well.
If a family were to elect to begin the year under an NRSD remote program, would it be possible to transfer students back to the hybrid model later in the year?
And the answer is?
The answer is yes.
Yes, that's right.
A rotating schedule would be extremely difficult for 2 parents working out of the home and figuring out childcare that also has to rotate. Will the schedule rotate?
No, and that's one of the reasons why we've gone to the 5-day cycle. And the 5-day cycle is exactly what it sounds like. It's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday cycle. So that's a huge shift for our school district, because our school district is very used to being run on 6-day cycles at the elementary and middle school level, and the high school is actually very used to running on an 8-day cycle. So for us to go to a 5-day cycle was an enormous undertaking, and trying to align the schools as best as we could. I think we've done a really good job of that, but it was a mammoth undertaking for us. So our elementary and middle schools, I think for the most part, I turned to Principal Mulcairn, I think for the most part the elementary middle schools are pretty much set with the 5-day cycle now, right? Is that correct? Oops.
Sorry, yes, that's correct. So we've been working on the 5-day cycle for a while, since I think early July, if not before that, because we'd heard that early on from the commissioner that we needed to be recommended to be on a 5-day Monday through Friday schedule. So that was sort of completed, and now we're reframing it based on the hybrid model. So, I mean, people can see over my shoulder, I have sticky notes and chart paper up, but it's a work in progress. And we're trying to calibrate between the buildings about that so that they look similar.
Great, thank you. And the high school too. The high school still has some tweaking to do, but it's done yeoman's work on this. And I think now, as we're sitting here this many weeks into this, we're looking and saying that was absolutely the right decision to make, and we're really glad that we did it. But a huge undertaking for a district that is not used to that type of a cycle. So no rotations.
Will K through 2 students have access to a device from the district? The answer is yes. We have ordered Chromebooks, and we'll have Chromebooks for all students in grades 3 through 12. Please keep in mind that kindergartners, first and second graders use iPads for executive functioning skills. So if students in K through 2 do need a device, we will follow the process we did in the spring and certainly be able to provide loaner devices for students in those grades. The next question, how will social distancing be handled in the middle and high schools when the kids change classrooms?
And I think we can do 9 and 10 as well.
Will kids stay put and teachers switch, or will kids move in lined up pods with the same students all day?
Right. So we're working really diligently to try to have the least amount of movement that we can. But none of this is a perfect model, no matter how hard we try. Because, if you think about it, that's asking students to stay in kind of the same position for a lot of hours during the day. And it doesn't feel really natural. But we are working very hard to try to keep them as limited as we can for movement. The high school took a look at it. I think they tried really hard to try to do some limited movement there, but it's just so much harder at the high school. So I think the elementary and middle schools, I think, have got a handle on that right now. But the high school, I just don't know that there's any way we're going to be able to work around that particular component.
The next two questions are kind of the same. I have one student at the high school and one at a lower grade level. Will students in the same families, siblings, be kept on the same schedule in a hybrid model? The answer to that question is yes. We'll be dividing students into cohorts according to alphabet so that families are put together and are on the same schedule.
And starting to draw the cohort doesn't mean that there won't be some other people that with last names that that are starting with R or S can't be incorporated into that. So we're not wed to that 100% model, but that is the foundational piece that starts our work.
Could you please confirm that Neshoba Regional School District will offer a remote learning option? We will be offering a remote learning option, and those who choose remote learning can certainly opt in for that, and our district will provide a remote learning option for all students who opt for that. We're actually working on providing and creating remote learning academies, where those academies are taking place within the buildings and the school communities that those students are associated with to offer a level of personalization. There'll be more coming out on that when we release the initial plan to the communities.
We've covered number 14,
Yep.
so we'll go to, and actually we've covered number 15 as well. Yep. We didn't really cover 16, but let's talk about that.
Is there a way to request a reassignment after things have been set if their days don't work for a family due to care, work, or no friends in their classes?
So again, I think we have to be really conscientious of the fact that we've got over 3,000 students in our district, and so I think the principals are trying really, really hard in their configurations of their class groupings and the cohorts right now to do the very best that they can so that we don't have over 3,000 requests that have to be worked through. So we're leaving this, our principals are really aware of their families. They know their families well. So I think we feel very comfortable right now that they're on track to try to make sure that they've got the best configurations possible.
Will the school calendar be revised to equalize in-person school time for each cohort? For example, if there's a Monday holiday or a Friday professional development day, will the schedule be changed to provide equity of in-school time? And the answer to that question is yes. We will look at those schedules and make sure that week by week there is equal in-person school time as well as compared to remote learning at home. With regard to the fully remote option, could you hold an information session giving parents more specific information or even a chance to fully preview the remote learning prior to making a decision? Similar to this forum tonight, we've talked about holding more building level specific forums later on when we have all of the information and we know what specific models are in play as we approach the fall. So we're certainly open to holding information sessions and giving previews to what that full remote option looks like moving forward.
We've covered 19, so we can go to 20.
That has to do with drop off and pickup. It looks like about 36% of parents indicate they would drive their children to and from school instead of using the bus. Assuming this is much more than normal school years, what protocols need to be in place for traffic control, safety, and efficiency?
So I'm going to take that one. We continue to work so closely with our safety partners, and you've got a great police department in Stow that we work very, very closely with. And so there's a good awareness, I think, that's available there. And so I think that they'll help out, certainly if we need that help. I think the other thing is that that percentage could change in a heartbeat. One of the things that has been really nice too is the number of parents who have submitted things to both Dr. McGuire and myself saying, what can we do to help? And one of the things that very consistently comes up is busing. And they say, would you like us to transport our child rather than busing them? And so as we get closer to the actual startup time, I think we'll have a much better idea. That also I'm just going to digress for half a minute away from that question. The surveys that we sent out, I also got a number of folks that were emailing me and saying, is this binding? And the answer is no. The surveys that we're sending out right now, we know that as parents, you might change your mind 3 or 4 times before we even start the year. And we expect that. And we respect that because these are tough decisions that we're making. And we're all working through trying to navigate these unprecedented times. So we know that these are tough decisions. So right at this point in time, we are not looking to hold anyone to the response that they gave us. And that goes for busing as well and transportation, as well as what are your thoughts about sending your child back? So we just want to put that out there.
We've been in town for 6 years, but this is our first year with the school system with an incoming kindergartner. Will there be an option for an in-person or virtual visit for our son to see the school or classroom and meet the teachers prior to the start of the year?
So the kindergartens, our little our babies coming into the kindergarten program are not the only concern we have. We're worried about the pre-K as well as the K, but we're also worried about those students who are transitioning into other buildings. For example, those students who are leaving Center and heading up to Hale, or leaving Hale and going over to be freshmen at the high school. And so we're really focused on that and are looking to try to do something to help that transition process. We don't have that all worked out in details right at this point in time, but we would want you to know that we're thinking a lot about it. I think too, one of the great gifts that came the other day with the 10 days for us to be putting up at the front of the school year. I think we're also looking and saying, how can we best utilize some of that time? And we see that we may be able to tap into some of that time to help out with this kind of thing too. The kindergarten too, I just want to make a quick comment on the kindergarten. We're still working out details for both kindergarten and pre-K, and we're still expecting guidance from EEC on that, as well as Russell Johnson's office. So there's guidance further that we're expecting in this area, but it's too soon for us to put anything out because the guidance has not come down yet that we need to make some good decisions around.
We've covered the next question. Number 26 is really a question from parents about how parents can help. We recognize that this is a major undertaking for the district to navigate. While there are a couple hundred faculty, we assume there are thousands of parents. Small or big, how can we help you in the ongoing efforts to make the most out of the school year ahead?
And this was our favorite question, wasn't it, Todd?
Right.
We kept teasing and saying, we need to blow this up and frame it, because, I think one of the great gifts that we have in Neshoba is our parent community. We just have amazing parents in all of our communities. And, I think that a lot of times people think that we only get cranky emails that come into us, and that's not true. We get a lot of really positive emails, and we are so appreciative of our parent community. And I guarantee that if we need some help, we know where to go, and we know how to find you. So we thank you so much for that, and we may be calling on you before September 16th. So thank you so much to whoever sent that in.
We've covered 27, 28, and 29. Will there be a 6-foot distance, or would there be a distance between 3 and 6 feet?
And I think Lisa kind of covered that too in earlier. So I don't think that there's a whole lot to add to that. I think one of the reasons we went to the hybrid though is because overarchingly, we weren't comfortable with the 3-foot distance. And, we had a lot of discussion with Lisa on this, and we understand that that was a DESE guidance, but, I think, and it may have been a dad even from Stow who sent something into me. I can't remember exactly who it was, and said, in Neshoba Regional, we never follow the minimum. And that really stuck with me. And I thought, he's so right. It doesn't matter whether we're hiring, whether we're, looking at grade, whatever, we don't accept the minimum. And this is one of those times where we had to look at ourselves, at each other as we were having this discussion and say, we're not comfortable with the 3-foot. We're not saying we disagree. We're just saying we think we can do better. So our goal right now is to try to have as much of the 6-foot distance as possible wherever it's feasible. We can't guarantee that, particularly at the high school, but in most of our elementary and middle school classrooms, for the most part, it pretty much works out that way.
I've heard you discuss live synchronous learning and would like to know more about what that entails. Will the students be watching a live feed of the classroom? It's a great question. We know that through survey results from teachers, students, and families, we certainly want to grow our synchronous learning. And for those who don't know, synchronous learning is really live instruction between teacher and student versus asynchronous learning, which could be watching videos or independent work, those types of things. So we are looking at ways that we can increase our synchronous learning through multiple platforms such as Google Meet and Zoom. And we're looking at ways to do that. We've also talked about live streaming from our classroom, and are currently looking at our technology across the district to determine how that might be possible for those remote learners who might be out 2 days of the week, and teachers having the ability to either record or stream their lessons to students who are home. So that continues to be ongoing, but we are beefing up our synchronous learning opportunities.
And I think too, Dr. McGuire, now would be maybe a good time to just touch base. The remote learning, and I think that we want to put out there, I'm so grateful to our staff and our administration, because none of us on March 5th saw this coming, none of us. And then when March 13th had, basically became that kind of that time frame where we realized that we were going out. Even at that point in time, I don't think anybody thought that we would be out this long, and not even thinking that we'd be sitting here like tonight saying, oh my gosh, what are the next steps? I think we all just expected we would go back and kind of return to normal. So I think, when we went out so quickly, it was a lot of work. And I remember, Dr. McGuire, those 4 days where we were told to basically move from beyond enrichment to teaching curriculum, and what that would look like. Our staff, I give full credit to our staff, because it was a pivotal moment for us to turn and do something completely different that, quite frankly, if you're a grade 2 teacher, it doesn't feel, again, really natural or normal to be teaching from, a computer versus in class type thing. That's just not how we do business. And so it was really, really hard. With that though, I think we learned a lot during that process. And Dr. McGuire, you might want to talk just really briefly right now. We're not coming back to the same model that we had in March, April, May.
We want to make sure people understand that when you go out so abruptly, you can't just immediately go to synchronous learning. You need to provide professional development for teachers and how to do synchronous learning. So if teachers have never been on Google Meet, or if teachers have never been on Zoom, or know how to even interact, we need to teach them, just like we teach students, how to do that before we can expect them and or ask them to do that. The other component, and everyone knows that I'm a stickler on those kinds of things, is the safety associated with two-way communication. We needed to make sure that the platforms that we were using were willing to sign our safety and security agreements, so that those third-party vendors don't sell off student information to other companies. So then all of a sudden students are getting really bad mail in their inbox, or Zoom addresses are being sent out to random people so that they can Zoom bomb a meeting or a lesson. And so until all of that was in place and teachers felt comfortable with the ability to do that, we could then move forward doing that. And so we were able to do that and open up all of that as the spring rolled on. But we did it methodically and we did it safely, where a lot of other school districts, met a lot of significant problems, and we weren't willing to do that. So we certainly will be equipped to do that in the fall. We certainly worked with Zoom. We've certainly worked with Google to make sure that those platforms will be ready to go and up and running. And now that we've been giving 10 professional development days at the start of the school year, we're certainly working to provide as much professional development in this area for our teachers so that they can be ready to go in a remote learning module or a hybrid learning module.
Great, thank you.
Next question.
31.
Will remote learners have a different teacher than in-person learners?
So the answer is probably yes. We're not, as we're mapping this out, I don't think there are necessarily any guarantees about staff. And we're still looking to see, we're trying to look at our district in its totality to see the teachers that will be returning, those that are looking for an accommodation. There's a lot of things up in the air right now with our staff that we have to settle and help organize and support. So there are no guarantees right now for who you're getting as a teacher.
So 35 and 36 we've covered.
Mm-hmm.
37, would our children's teachers or potentially other teachers in the school from the same grade be developing and sharing content and activities, whether through pre-recorded videos, independent building one on in-person time, or other means? The answer to that question is yes. And the 10 days prior to school starting will certainly provide an opportunity for our teachers to work together and to collaborate. But the goal will be that at each grade level and at each discipline level, those prioritized standards are going to be focused on and met, and that sharing of content and instruction models will be shared across the district so that there is continuity and consistency in instructional delivery. Would our children's own teachers be giving them feedback on this remote work in some way, whether through a remote platform such as Seesaw or Google Classroom, or during in-person sessions? So yes, if students are in a remote learning academy, they will be getting feedback from the teachers that are working in that particular remote learning module with them. However, when children are doing the hybrid model, when they go home to do remote learning, they will be getting direct feedback from the teacher that they're working with in the classroom on the days that they are in school. So all students will be getting feedback from teachers that they are working with on a regular daily basis.
I think the other thing too, I just want to add, and it digresses just a little bit, but kind of ties in with this. When we say that we're going back to a very different model, there were all kinds of reasons why we were not allowed to do grading as in the traditional form during our first couple of months out. And that really had a lot to do with some of the federal regulations that are in play. So it wasn't something like the Neshoba Regional School District decided that we're just going to do pass fail. It had nothing to do with that. It was way beyond us, way beyond our level and beyond the state level. But different waivers have now been secured by the state. And so we are able to do take a more traditional approach as we look at grading when we return in the fall.
The next two questions are very similar as it relates to screen time. Will teachers be able to give students the option to complete some assignments by hand instead of on a computer? Will they be able to provide students with activities that can be done offline, at least in part? And certainly the answer to that question is yes. Certainly when you're involved with asynchronous learning, you're not working with that one-on-one screen time or that one-on-one lesson. So we certainly will be taking into consideration in balancing screen time, knowing that in a remote model, that screen time can be high. I think it's part of the reason why we are looking at hybrid, so that every student in the district is at least in school in a building for a couple of days each week versus going in for a week and then waiting a whole 10 days to come back. And that's part of the reason why we decided to go with that model. So we're certainly working on that balance and understand that screen time can be difficult. And I know us as adults feel that way too with all the Zoom meetings that we do have now on a daily basis. The next question, in remote learning, whether all remote or hybrid, to what extent will students be required to follow a schedule? And to what extent can they complete activities on their own schedule? That's a great question. It was a question that we asked in our survey. Would a schedule be helpful? Overwhelmingly, the answer to that question was yes. So whether it be remote learning or even obviously in the hybrid model, we're really focused on providing a schedule for students so that they know day by day what that schedule looks like. Just as if they were coming into school every day, they know what their schedule looks like. So we're in the process of building that schedule. We're meeting with principals, the teaching and learning department, to provide a very specific schedule, especially for those people who are in remote learning, so that they know what to expect during the hours of any given school day. What will happen about in-person class assignments to kids who start the year remote? No different than kids who are going hybrid. The assignments will be the same. The assessment will be expected from teachers. So all assignments will be very consistent across the district, whether students are in a remote model or a hybrid model. Students will receive active feedback from teachers. And again, that's going to be part of our professional development model. How do we give authentic feedback in class assignments, whether you're in an in-person, hybrid, or all remote model for students in learning. The next question, my third grader has a class group and teacher that she's really happy about for this year. If she starts the year remote, will she join that same class and teacher if we later decide to put her into in-person school? Brooke, did you want to address that one?
Sorry, sure, yeah. So the bottom line is, and I said this a little bit earlier, I don't think that we have any guarantees right now. Thank you for bringing that up, Todd. I don't think that we have any guarantees right now about, again, it goes back to the teacher that was originally designated. We don't know. It may happen, it may not happen, but there are no guarantees at this moment.
Okay, then,
Todd, I was looking at the next 44, 45, 46, and 47 have all been answered.
yep.
48, 49 have been.
Yep. 50.
Yeah, 50. Let's go to 50. Yeah.
We have family in other schools in the area, and they were informed that recess was going to be eliminated for kids. Is this something that the Neshoba district is planning on? We strongly feel that recess is a vital part of education and would not support eliminating it.
Thank you. So I think that we too, as an administrative team, also feel that recess is a vital part of our growth for our children. However, with that having been said, there have been no final decisions made on that. And I think that there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen yet with our nurse leader and, before we roll anything out saying yes or no to it. But we too believe that recess is a critical component.
Will families be able to choose full remote learning, or will there be certain qualifications for students to be eligible for remote? And the answer is, if you choose remote learning, you're in remote learning. There are no qualifications for students to be eligible for full remote. If I choose to enroll my second grader in the full remote learning option, would he still have the same teacher that he was originally given for this year? Also, will there be some type of daily Zoom meeting to interact with his teacher and the other students?
And again, I'm going to go back and say there are no guarantees with the teachers at this point in time. So, and I think that you've already answered the second part of that with the synchronous learning. 53 was answered last night, so was 54. We've responded to 55, and I've responded to 56.
57?
57, yeah.
Many things you see online from theoretical teachers talk about students being in seats all day and teachers not being able to approach to help them. While I understand the need for social distancing, I also understand the need for children to have interaction with each other and their teachers to learn effectively. What is envisioned to help our youngest students have a positive introduction to the school system?
Yeah, and that's a really tough question to respond to, because again, like I said right at the outset of this, none of this feels natural or normal to us. I think we are acutely aware of that, and we'll probably work to probably overcompensate for that, because we want, one of the things we talk about as administrative team is that joy of learning, and how do we keep that joy of learning alive for our students? And this is going to particularly challenge us and our teachers to continue to keep that nugget of joy in all of the work that we're doing. One of the reasons we went to the hybrid was so that there was more room, so that a teacher could move about the classroom. When we took a look at the full return, and we measured out all of our schools, we knew very quickly that the teacher would be boxed in at the 6-foot mark at the front of the classroom. And that was one of the reasons why we looked at the hybrid versus the full return.
Can we start in remote learning and then put our child back in, or vice versa? I think we covered that one already. Are children going to have to eat sitting alone?
And again, that's another one of these things that feels not normal. The truth is, yes, and as we take a look at this, and especially because they can't have the masks on when they're eating, so there has to be that 6-foot distance, and that's a challenge for us. At every school, for example, at the high school, as we look at different
You ready?
cafeteria. We're looking at potentially removing all of the tables and bringing 150 desks and doing stage lunches at the high school. But those children are going to have to be sitting at the desk to eat at the 6-foot distance. So there's no way of just having them sit with their best friends. I mean, they can sit close to their friends in 6-foot distance, but they can't sit like they would normally sit for a regular lunch.
Who is the teacher for 100% remote? Who are the teachers for hybrid remote learning?
That's just being worked on right now.
Yep.
That's a huge juggernaut for us to work through right now. So it's way too soon for us to have an answer right now.
Okay. How much is going to be live instruction? So as we mentioned, I think part of the model, the hybrid model that we're going with, is so that there is live instruction for our students 100% 2 days out of the week. And then on the other 2 days that they are home, or 3 days that they're home in remote learning, we're really working on that balance. As we mentioned, the balance with screen time, but as well as, that balance of synchronous versus asynchronous learning. So I think we will find that there will be a balance of live instruction with instruction that won't be live, but certainly providing a variety of ways for students to engage with the curriculum. And so we're currently working on that, but that is part of the reason why we worked on pushing forth this hybrid model, so that there would be a large element of live instruction in all that we're doing moving forward for the year. What is happening with art, computers, music, library, and gym?
So that's a great question, and I would tell you that we've just recently received guidance. I think Wednesday night is when the guidance came out for some of this. It's still problematic for us. I mean, there are no simple answers on this. For example, like art, one of the things that continues to come up is the fact that we're trying as best as we possibly can to avoid sharing of supplies, and that, again, doesn't matter whether you're at the grade 2 level or the grade 12 level. What does that look like? So, when we think about art, that's a piece of it. The computers, I don't see us using our computer labs during this upcoming year. Physical education, we're looking at that a little bit differently, and again, differently at the 3 groupings, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school. High school, we're really looking quite substantially differently at what that course is going to be looking like. And it's going to be probably substantially different than what we're used to. Probably more of a focus on fitness, for example, rather than team sports and that kind of thing. Music, that also continues to be something huge for us to work through. I think, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that what they were suggesting is that choral could happen, for example, if it was outside at the 10-foot mark, and we could do it if we got tents type thing. And but tents right now, first of all, if we can even get tents, because a lot of the tents and structures are taken up for hospitals and those other kinds of things. And there's not a lot left for schools. If we can get a tent, it's $25,000 for a 3-month period. And you multiply that over for what we would need in each, each of our communities, it's almost cost prohibitive. So sometimes we find that the guidance that we get from DESE, and we're not being negative by any stretch, but it's almost not doable. And choral and band right now, that's one of the things that's almost not doable in the way that they have suggested it. However, with that being said, knowing our music teachers and art teachers, for example, they're so creative, they're so innovative. It won't surprise me that they don't dream up something that none of us, somebody like me who's so sequential, is not thinking of right now. So so we'll see where that ends up. Library, right now, we're not sure if we're going to even be able to open any of our libraries. So that's still a big question mark for us. And the gym, I just spoke with that with regards to phys ed. So I think I've covered that.
Can children go to the bathroom when they need to?
Yes.
The answer is yes. My daughter is nervous about not knowing where the first grade classroom will be and how to find it once we drop her off at school. Is there a plan to support the young kindergarten children in this transition?
And I think we've already answered that too when we spoke about the transition, the grade groupings that we've got some of the greatest concern with.
Are backpacks and personal belongings allowed from home? How do school supplies work?
There'll be more guidance coming out on that. We're also awaiting guidance from DESE on that, so we don't have an answer to that one tonight.
If teachers have to be 6 feet from children, how can real learning or helping a child read or solve a math problem happen?
And that, I think that's where it gets into, again, that's one of the reasons why we've gone to the hybrid model, so that a teacher can move about in the classroom. When we did the measurement of the classrooms for the full return, it just couldn't happen, but it should be able to happen now.
Who covers a classroom if their teacher is out sick? Do we have a certain pool of substitutes?
And the answer is yes.
How can we physically keep these children apart when they haven't seen each other or been around other kids in months?
Please don't think that we haven't thought about that a million times over. I think it's even going to be hard for our staff when staff all come together too, because these are people that it's kind of like your second family, whether it's your colleagues or whether it's your peers in school, whether it's your BFF at grade 2, this, again, none of this feels natural or normal. And I think for things like this particular question, we need help from our parents. This is an area that I think that we're going to need a lot of help and support from our parents, just to help guide their children and say, you've got to keep that mask on all day, unless it's you're eating or there's a mask break, things like that. That you can't hug your best friend, that you can't do that right now. So, and I look at my own, my own son and daughter-in-law as they're helping our, my little granddaughter try to work her way through this. She's very accustomed to wearing her mask now, little unicorns printed all over it and such, and it just, I think that we have to rely on our parents as much to be partners with us as we try to navigate all of this. We can't do this alone as a school district.
Is there going to be any type of emotional support for children when they come back? The answer certainly is yes. As we're looking at and building this model, people will understand that cohort A will be in on 2 days, and then cohort B will be in for 2 days towards the end of the week. But that Wednesday is really carved out, and as we continue to build the planning to provide a remote part of the learning for social emotional learning for all of our students. We've been working with principals. Programs such as advisories are being put into play, but we're also really working in our department. We've got, I think Christine Nealon is with us tonight. She and Caitlin Angulo are working tremendously hard on creating and providing resources and a curriculum that's tied to social emotional learning for all of our students. So it is a huge concern. And certainly we're doing a lot of work around providing the emotional support for children when they come back. We recognized that when we went out in March, connections had already been established. So kids could get online with students and teachers and know their teacher. we certainly recognize now that all of these connections need to be established. These are new teachers, these are new groups of students. And so that is a big focus of ours in providing this kind of emotional support for the children as they enter back into school. And I think our ESY program, which started up this summer, is a good example of that and how we're trying to provide that for those groups of kids who are already back this summer and doing some of that learning.
I also see it different for the different age groups, you know, how we're dealing with it looking to deal with it at the elementary school. The middle school is very different, and the high school is very different. I am really excited about some of the work that the high school is doing this summer in this area. So I feel very, very comfortable and confident in the work that's being laid as foundational work before our students even walk into those buildings.
There's going to be a deadline of when we have to decide if we will send our children for hybrid or remote.
In a perfect world, we'd say from our lens as an administrative team, we wish that there was, because it would make our lives infinitely easier. But we know that in a lot of cases, this is going to be fluid, as this entire situation is fluid, and people are going to change their minds, or they're going to have something happen in their world. So they're going to say, wow, we thought we were going to go this way, but now again, they'll have to pivot. So, you know, I feel that it will be artificial for us to say, we need to know by such and such date. Now, as we get closer, maybe we'll be able to, and maybe we'll feel more comfortable because things will be all settled. You know, this is not a good example, but I mean, if we knew that Massachusetts was able to eradicate this completely, then we'd be in a totally different situation. But that's not where we are, and that's not our reality right now. So I think we want to work with our parents right now, knowing full well that this is fluid.
The next 3 questions all have to do with assessment. How is grading being done? Will children receive assessment tests at the beginning of school and throughout learning to ensure they're not falling behind? And if they do fall behind, what resources are in place to help them get back? So unlike the spring, grading will be done in a traditional way. Students will receive grades. Student will receive feedback from teachers, so it will not be a pass-fail. The expectation is that all standards and benchmarks are being addressed. Our team is currently working on prioritizing those standards so that we know the essential standards, particularly being addressed when kids are in classroom with synchronous learning. We're really focused on providing a variety of formative assessments along the way. Formative assessments continue to assess and test kids along the way to make sure that they are ready and able for summative assessments and final assessments in a given unit. So that's a big focus of ours. And certainly if students are falling behind, you know, we're continually working with our guidance departments and our principals, as well as providing supports so that students can get back up to grade, and especially having those teacher check-ins, teacher office hours, and those times when kids can check in with their teacher if they're not actually in school. So assessment will be done as it has been done. And there is a strong focus on really focusing on standards and giving that oral and written feedback for students throughout the model. Will start times be staggered to alleviate pickup and drop-off issues? Are there any plans in place to deal with more parents utilizing pickup and drop-off to make it run more smoothly?
So this was something that we initially were looking at quite deeply as we were initially starting our journey with the full return model. And one of the things that stymied us with the full return is the number of bus requirements that DESE had put out there with the guidance. And we realized very quickly that we could not do it. And at that point in time, we were looking at the fact that does this need to be, do we need to have staggered times to do this? For example, like a 77 passenger bus, for example, right now can only accommodate 26 students per run. And some of our 77 passenger buses are pretty full. They might not be at 77, but they're probably in the 60s. And so that was something we had to really take a look at. It's also one of the reasons why we moved away from the full return, because what we found is that we would be losing like almost 2 hours off of our day if we abided by all the DESE guidance, and just to get our students moved to and from the home and school. So with a hybrid model, we're hoping that we won't necessarily be in that position, but quite frankly, we won't have details on that until we get really close to the actual start time. So more to follow on that. At this point in time, we don't think so, but that may change.
The next several questions were answered last night, so we're going to skip down to 85. I would like to ask that at the upcoming meetings that there more details gone into what realistically will be in the expectation of students during a school day. Will they be able to play? Will they be able to move about the classroom? How much interaction will they have, and how closely will the teachers be able to interact with students?
So in some ways, we're able to kind of answer this. In other ways, we don't have full answers for you on this, other than much of what I've already said. The teachers will be able to move about the classrooms. The students will be able to too, because again, in working within the 6-foot range with the masks on, there's a little bit more latitude than if we had done the full return. So I think that we feel comfortable that students and teachers aren't going to be completely boxed in. I know when we looked at the full return, it really did look like everybody had to be boxed in, and that again, that wasn't a good feeling at all for us. So again, another reason why we went to the hybrid model. So that 86 has been answered as well.
Yep, 87. At the high school, might student be able to take the classes he registered for at the levels he registered for? For example, college prep, honors, accelerated, advanced placement, whether we choose remote or hybrid. And the answer is yes, whether you're in a remote or a hybrid option, whatever level class students signed up for, they will take and receive that level of class. Particularly as it relates to advanced placement as well, keep in mind that advanced placement is run by the College Board. So last year, the College Board still managed to get all AP tests conducted, but they were done online. The feedback was highly successful. So, we'll have to follow AP guidelines on those kinds of things. But in terms of class leveling, those types of classes will still be honored for students. Keep in mind as well, though, some electives might change or not be offered given the model that we are in and the changes that we are having to make certainly within these models. And Brooke, you might want to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, thank you. So, one of the things that, when you're going from that 8-day cycle to a 5-day cycle, there are some changes that definitely happen in there. So we really took a look at all levels, elementary, middle, and high school, at starting our work with our core subjects first and then branching out from there. So we wanted to make sure that the key courses that we knew our students needed got the top priority, and then we built the electives in around those. But yes, I think that at this point in time, we're hoping to try to get everything in for the electives, but there's no promises for the electives at the high school level.
We covered 88. How will the hybrid plan work at the high school with switching classes? Students are all taking different classes at different levels. Will they switch classes like normal? And if so, how will classrooms be cleaned well enough with not much time between classes?
So that's a great question, and I would say that we don't have an answer to that just yet. It's something we're certainly well aware of. We're having a lot of dialogue on it. Initially when they started to build the high school schedule, we looked at the possibility of trying to not have the students move quite as much, but quite frankly, it just doesn't work for us in that building. And so then that brings up the next question of, well, okay, if we can't do that, how do you clean those desks in between or those rooms? And so we are working with our director of facilities on that, and that would probably be something that comes a little bit later rather than right now for an answer.
And last question, with the 2-week delay of school opening, will the first day of school be Monday, 9/14?
And the answer is no. The date will actually be for students will be September 16th, and that was talked about at the school committee meeting last night. I think too, depending on, I know that the commissioner consistently tells us that we need to be nimble and we need to be prepared to pivot at any moment in time. And I think that that also holds true for the calendar, because we don't know what's coming up throughout the course of this next year. We may still have to make some additional changes somewhere in there. So at this point in time, and the September 16th date, by the way, is also the date that has come down from the DESE. And they have told us that we have to put all of those 10 days up front. And so that's where they are currently sitting at, is the front of the school year. So hence, that's why the September 16th date. And I think that's it for these. The other thing I'd want to mention too is that the school committee received a number of questions, and we created an FAQ sheet that I believe Todd is posted right now on on our website. Do you want to just talk to about the website itself and the tab that we've got on there? We lost Todd. Then I'll do that until we wait for him to come back on. So there's a tab on the main page of the NRSD website. And initially that's where we put everything related to COVID. And any articles that we thought were important, or anything that was coming from the DESE that we thought parents would have interest in, we put everything on there. All of our memos that went out to parents, anything like that that we thought might be of interest, we put on that tab. We have since changed that tab now to a reopening tab, and so that's where you're seeing all of our reopening things go. So there's a tab there right now with frequently asked questions for the school committee. We also are working through frequently asked questions from the steering committee, and there are about another 100 questions on there, and we're hoping to get that. I don't think we're going to get it up by the end of this week, but hopefully maybe next week we'll be able to get that up too. And that's more, as opposed to tonight where it was really where it's taped and people can go back and take a look at it. It was more oral responses to the questions, as opposed to the frequently asked questions to both the steering committee and the school committee. We've gone in and written actual responses to those. So again, you'll see a number of those up there as well. So I think that, and I'm not sure if Todd is back on, but if he is, please let us know that you're back.
I'm back.
Oh, there he is. Okay, great. So I think that's it for the questions that we received ahead of time from the 3 communities. So at this point in time, if there are any additional questions, if we don't have the answers, we are not afraid to tell you that we don't have the answers right now. So, I can actually see that. I'm not sure where Elaine is, but Elaine, I just saw that from Tara. So I think we responded to that question right at the very beginning.
We did.
So we are taking a look at the calendar, and the administrators, the principals, and Anne-Marie Stoika, who oversees the calendar, are working through some of the details on that, and we'll feed that information out as we get closer to the year. But we want to make sure that there's equity, as much equity as we possibly can navigate. And we do that all the time anyway between the 3 communities. I think it's really important that, for example, what's happening, for example, in a classroom in Stow is similar to something that's happening in Lancaster. This is that same type of calibration. So we want to make sure that the equity is there. So yes, we're definitely taking a look at that.
Yeah, so similar to what happened in Lancaster last night, everyone saved their questions until everything was done, so that they're sort of coming in fast and furious. One logistical question actually is this list of questions with any answers posted anywhere currently?
No, because we really saw this as more of, and actually I just responded to that. There are 2 other lists of questions that are posted, but we weren't planning on posting answers to this set of questions, this group of 100 questions.
And these are obviously recorded and be posted on our YouTube and also on the website for people if they actually want to watch as well. So
our thanks to Nikki for that. Thank you, Nikki, for being here again tonight.
Yes, thank you, Nikki. I have another question from Elise. It says, I've heard folks talking about, quote, building-based remote learning models to promote school-based personalized communities, end quote. Could you explain more about what that means?
Yep, and I talked about it earlier. So in other words, when we were looking at our remote learning model, we want to make sure that students who are in remote learning aren't just in some ubiquitous remote learning. We want to make sure that the remote learning that they're in there with students who are in their own building or their classes, say at the Mary Rowlandson School or at the Center School or at the Hale School, and teachers in that program are from that school, so that they're still part of that school community and they're not feeling like they're in some, bigger district wide where there are kids from, all over the district. So we're working on creating those kind of personalized remote learning communities within a school.
Elaine, I saw you too just respond to somebody who had asked the question, and I want to say again, there is ongoing guidance that is being released, and when I say drip fashion, that's not being negative, but I think it's as fast as the DESE can possibly pump it out, because we need guidance in so many areas, and so I think that they're doing the best that they can. To us, it's slow. To them, I'm sure it's like lightning speed for them, but for us, sometimes it feels like it's 3 or 4 weeks behind the time that we needed to make the decision. But there's still a lot of guidance that we are anticipating from the state.
Thank you. And her question was specific to pre-K for anyone who's not looking at the chat right now. And we are still waiting on guidance. Jason asks that the high school schedule, electives, etc., are still fluid. However, is there a shell of a draft or how class periods might look?
I can take that, Todd. So the high school administrative team right now under Mr. Colonine, and we have 2 new assistant principals there, and they are fabulous. I love the energy that they bring, and I believe that they have a shell that is created already, but they are tweaking it and they are working with the department chairs on it. So is there a shell there? Yes, there's definitely a shell there. Is it ready to hand out for public dissemination? Probably not. I think it's probably just a little bit too soon, but I know that they're working really, really hard on that.
Our next question is from Jennifer. It says, I understand that some local superintendents are discussing the possibility of offering a full-time in-person placement for the children of parents who are public school teachers, even if they're teachers in other districts. Is this a discussion our district is having?
So it isn't specific to a district. So that's a great question. And I'd love to know where that individual heard that information from, because I didn't think that that was openly discussed. So I find that fascinating. But whoever asked, you said it was Jennifer?
Yes, well, I know that a lot of parents love to talk about Concord, and the Concord Rec Department is working on something that sounds a lot similar to this. So that might be where it came from.
So the bottom line is that was something that was discussed earlier. I don't think it's in a fluid discussion right now, but it certainly was discussed, Todd, maybe a month ago. And that was really in discussion at the commissioner level with the unions. That's where that discussion, it was initiated. It was not initiated at the local levels. So are the superintendents aware that that discussion had happened? Yes, we absolutely are, but it wasn't something that we were tackling by any stretch, because in part that opens up school choice, the school choice discussion, which NRSD is not a school choice school district. It opens up a lot of other things that could come into play. So I think that when they got deeper into it, I don't know if Concord is doing that. I have no idea, but I think that there's a lot of tentacles to that one that still need to be worked out if, in fact, they continue down that roadway.
Okay, there's a very perceptive question from Emerson that says, if the first day of school is September 16th, that's a Wednesday. And under this remote model of a Monday, Tuesday, everyone remote on Wednesday, another cohort is on Thursday and Friday. What does your first day of school look like if everyone's remote?
Yeah, that's right. So I think, again, I think you'll see us, I mean, we're looking at different options, and please don't take this with a grain of salt as I say this, but I mean, we're even looking at how do we phase in, how do we get our children back? How do we get that confidence rebuilt and the comfort for our children and our staff? So I think you'll see us come out with a bit of a different schedule for that first week back to make sure that everybody is able to get in and feel comfortable. Great question.
Okay, so that's all that I have for right now, unless people are typing furiously.
We'll give it another minute or two. I think one of the things we want to make sure too is you can always reach out to your principals. I mean, they're the ones that are out on the ground. You've got amazing administrators in Stow. We've got amazing administrators across the district, quite frankly. But they're always accessible. They're always responsive. So if you've got questions beyond tonight, feel free and feel comfortable to please email them. Of course, you can always email Dr. McGuire and myself, but we always tend to have that 50,000 foot level in terms of how things are going to work district-wide. If you're looking for something specific though to your community, your principals are probably the best source for you to go to with any further questions.
Yes, and I just want to remind everyone that if you scroll up to the very top of the chat from the beginning of the meeting, you will see a bunch of links for the replay of this video for school committee meetings, for all the state guidance documents, some emails for the school committee for Dr. McGuire and the superintendent, and I'll put the principal's emails in there now along the bottom. Information that you guys might want to have available so that you can look at things outside of forums like this.
I think another question just came in.
Yes, from a Mr. Rich Eckel. The name sounds familiar.
Who is that?
Has the district considered some of the other properties in Stow, such as Pompo Community Center or the pavilions at the Stow Community Park or Pine Bluff as options?
I'm not sure if he's thinking for full return. When we were looking at the potential for full return, that was something that we did consider. And for quite a while, we were looking at different things for the high school, particularly because at the high school, we've got just under 1,000 students there. And so that was something that we were considering when we were looking at the full return. I think that every one of us thinks that, in all honesty, we would not be surprised as administrators that we won't go through the 3 different models throughout the course of this year. You know, I think that, you know, we're being told to plan for that remote as a full remote as a possibility, especially as we get into the major flu seasons and all that kinds of things. So, you know, but of course, we're always really gunning to get back to the full return because that's where we want to be. But that full return may ultimately look different. And so are we considering other properties? Yes, that has certainly been up for discussion. For full return, not hybrid.
Okay, so I put the principal's emails then at the bottom of the chat if anybody needs those as well.
Great.
For future reference, all of our emails are first initial and last name at nrsd.net. So there is a pattern to it.
You're welcome, Rich. I think that's it then. So I think we'll jump off of this one because we've got the high school one starting in about 20 minutes or so. So we thank everyone tonight for attending. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you found this to be helpful. Again, we know that these are difficult times to navigate. It's difficult for us as leaders in the district, but we know how difficult this is for our parents too. And by the way, it would be a lost opportunity if I didn't thank our parents for all of your support and helping in these last couple of months. We couldn't have done it as well without you. And so we thank you so much for everything. So with that, we'll say good night, and we'll make sure that we save the chat. So I'm not sure, Elaine, if you're able to do that or you need somebody else to. You're probably good at saving the chat now.
Yeah, no problem. I'll take
Okay.
it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great night. Thank you so much.